It was after the second double murders they started using the name Phantom in the local newspaper. No one felt like he or she was safe.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we'll be taking a look at the most definitive mysteries from each U.S. state that have yet to be solved.
At that time, when this first broke, it went all over the world in 3 days' time. And I got calls from all over the world.
Alabama, the disappearance of Shannon Nicole Pulk.
It was nearly 16 years ago when the city of Prattville was shaken by a tragic crime. A little girl went missing and later found murdered.
In August 2001, the community of Prattville was shattered when 11-year-old Shannon Nicole Pulk vanished from her neighborhood. Witnesses saw the young girl talking to a man in a vehicle just moments before she disappeared. Despite the abduction occurring in broad daylight within a populated trailer park, the vehicle drove away unnoticed. Her remains were found 2 months later in a remote field, turning a desperate search into a homicide investigation. Despite witnesses seeing Pulk speaking to a man in a car, the driver has never been identified. For over 2 decades, the child killer has walked free, hiding behind the silence of a small town and a trail that went cold the moment that car turned the corner.
But the morning of August 16th was the last time she was seen alive. 60 days later, her body found in a wooded hunting area about 17 miles from her home. Her killer still at large today.
Alaska, the disappearance of Begitch and Bogs. In 1972, a Cessna carrying U.S. House Majority Leader Hale Boggs and Representative Nick Begitch vanished from the frozen wilderness of the Alaska Triangle. This wasn't just a missing plane, it triggered the largest search and rescue operation in American history up to that point. 40 military aircraft and 50 civilian planes scoured the landscape for 39 days, yet no wreckage, debris, or bodies were ever located. The complete absence of evidence fueled wild conspiracies, ranging from political assassination to supernatural interference. The tragedy actually forced Congress to pass laws requiring emergency locator transmitters in all civil aircraft. Today, the fate of these high-ranking politicians remains frozen in time, buried somewhere beneath the endless Alaskan ice and snow. Arizona, the death of Chuck Morgan.
But in 1977, Chuck Morgan had become a potential witness in a state land fraud case involving a known organized crime boss. And suddenly, on March 22nd, Morgan disappeared.
In 1977, Tucson escrow agent Chuck Morgan vanished, only to reappear 3 days later in a state of terror. He couldn't speak, claiming in written notes that a hallucinogenic drug had been painted on his throat to silence him. 2 months later, Morgan was found dead in the desert from a gunshot wound to the back of the head. Despite wearing a bulletproof vest and having his own tooth wrapped in a handkerchief in his pocket, authorities ruled that he had taken his own life. The mystery is cemented by the strange clues found on his body. A $2 bill pinned to his underwear containing a coded map and Bible verses referencing the Golden Bowl and silver cord. Was Morgan a victim of a sophisticated mob hit or a man unraveling from paranoia? The coded bill remains undeciphered, and the truth likely died with him in the Arizona sand.
If he was quietly providing assistance to the U.S. government in monitoring the activities of one or more major organized crime families, he wasn't a villain. He was a good guy. And they need to know that.
Arkansas, the boys on the tracks.
Scientific evidence revealed they had not smoked enough pot to be unconscious, and they possibly died before the train hit them. In his words, the deaths are, quote, not accidental. Burton says Henry had a stab wound and not related to anything the train did to this boy.
Teenagers Don Henry and Kevin Ives were struck by a train in Alexander, Arkansas in 1987. What began as a ruling of accidental marijuana intoxication quickly unraveled when a second autopsy revealed that the boys had been stabbed and bludgeoned before being placed on the tracks. The reclassification to homicide sparked a firestorm of controversy. Over the years, the case became infamous for allegations of high-level corruption and a protected drug ring, with rumors swirling that witnesses connected to the case died under suspicious circumstances. But despite public outcry, the so-called train deaths remain officially unsolved, leaving a cloud of suspicion over who placed the boys on the tracks that night.
My thoughts are that one day, somebody is going to, I hate to use the word stumble, but come upon answers to the questions of what specifically happened to the boys and why it happened to them.
California, the Zodiac killer.
People are going to ask, was that thing even loaded?
Terrorizing the Bay Area in the late 1960s, the Zodiac killer remains the ultimate American cold case. He killed at least 5 verified victims while taunting police with complex ciphers and letters. And although his infamous 340 cipher was finally cracked by amateurs in 2020, the message provided no identity. Contrary to popular belief, the Zodiac did in fact leave traces, including partial DNA and fingerprints, but forensic limitations of the time and unmatched samples have kept him a faceless phantom. Despite thousands of leads and prime suspects like Arthur Lee Allen, no evidence has ever definitively linked anyone to the crimes, and the window to catch this cryptographic killer is slowly closing.
The prints, the handwriting. I'm not asking you as a cop, but I am a cop. I can't prove this. Just because you can't prove it doesn't mean it's not true.
Colorado. The murder of JonBenét Ramsey.
It is one of the greatest unsolved crimes in history.
We have a kidnapping. There's a ransom note here.
A little girl vanishes from home Christmas night.
The 1996 murder of 6-year-old JonBenét Ramsey in her Boulder home is a case that divides the nation. Found in the basement hours after a ransom note was discovered in the home, the young beauty queen had been bludgeoned and strangled. The case is a labyrinth of compromised evidence. The crime scene was not secured, and family friends were allowed to freely roam the house. Suspicion ping-ponged between an intruder and the parents, yet DNA evidence found in her clothing pointed to an unknown male. The mystery persists not only because her killer was never caught, but because the physical evidence contradicts the circumstantial and popular theories. Despite decades of media scrutiny and grand jury hearings, investigators cannot conclusively prove who wrote the note or who struck the fatal blow, leaving justice permanently out of reach.
When I opened the door, and when I turned the light on, and
Connecticut. The murder of Suzanne Jovin.
Well, today marks 27 years since Yale student Suzanne Jovin was found dead in New Haven's East Rock neighborhood.
On December 4th, 1998, Yale senior Suzanne Jovin was stabbed 17 times in the East Rock neighborhood of New Haven, miles from the safety of campus. The investigation became a cautionary tale of tunnel vision, as police publicly named her thesis advisor as a primary suspect despite no physical evidence linking him to the crime. Unfortunately, this singular focus likely allowed the real killer to escape detection. By the time the advisor was fully exonerated years later, the trail had gone cold. And unlike many cold cases in which forensic evidence proves elusive, investigators actually possess the killer's DNA, as some was found under Jovin's fingernails. Alas, it matches no one in the system. Until that genetic profile finds a name, Suzanne's killer continues to walk free, perhaps hiding in plain sight.
And we're really interested in anybody in the neighborhood, anybody that might have seen something that, or anybody at the university that may have information that may help us.
Delaware. The murder of John P. Wheeler III.
On December 31st, a garbage truck dumped its contents into a Delaware landfill, and out fell a dead body. It would have been a shocking story under any circumstances, but the identity of the victim made it national news.
The 2010 death of John P. Wheeler III is a baffling mix of Washington politics and bizarre behavior. A former presidential aide, Wheeler was found murdered in a Delaware landfill. Security footage from the days leading up to his death captured him wandering Wilmington disoriented, wearing one shoe and appearing terrified of an unseen threat. The story became enormously popular, not only for the murder itself, but the disconnect between his high-status life and his gritty, tragic end. Was he the victim of a random mugging, a mental health crisis, or a targeted political hit? The lack of a clear crime scene and the strange behavior captured on video offer more questions than answers, and authorities have never determined who dumped his body or why he was targeted.
Little is known beyond the fact that he had been involved in a dispute with a neighbor over house construction. The police investigation is ongoing, and the FBI has gotten involved.
Florida. The disappearance of Jennifer Kesse.
There is new hope in the search for an Orlando woman missing for nearly 20 years now.
Yeah, the family of Jennifer Kesse says their daughter's cold case is no longer cold.
24-year-old Jennifer Kesse vanished from her Orlando condo on January 23, 2006, leaving behind a pristine apartment and a baffling puzzle. Kesse's car was discovered a mile away from the apartment, and surveillance cameras actually captured the person who parked it. But in a stroke of maddening bad luck, the suspect's face was obscured by a fence gate in every single image captured by the automated camera. This luckiest criminal ever walked away unidentified, leaving investigators with zero solid leads. Unfortunately, there is no physical evidence of a struggle, and the only visual clue is virtually useless, leaving this mystery with a frustrating lack of leeway. Without a body or an identification of the phantom figure in the photos, the case remains a heartbreaking stalemate.
If we find that mystery man, we'll have our questions, whether that person did something directly to Jennifer or was asked to do something with Jennifer's car. If we find that person, it's over. I can guarantee you, it's over.
Georgia, the Atlanta Ripper. Decades before modern profiling, the Atlanta Ripper stalked the streets of Georgia. From 1911 to 1912, this shadowy figure targeted young African-American women, slitting their throats and leaving their bodies in dark alleyways. At least 15 victims were claimed, yet the killer operated with near impunity. While police attempted to investigate, their efforts were hampered by the primitive forensics of the era and the deep racial segregation that divided the city. And to make matters worse, the mystery is compounded by confusion over whether this was a single serial killer or multiple copycats. Ultimately, the Atlanta Ripper remains a ghost of the South, a terrifying reminder of a time when systemic racism allowed a monster to slip away into history. Hawaii, the mystery of the Sarah Joe.
He's gonna be hard on my little boy.
Back in 1979, 5 men departed the island of Maui on the Sarah Joe for a fishing trip, and then they vanished into a storm, leaving behind a tantalizing Hawaiian mystery. 10 years later, the boat was found on a remote atoll in the Marshall Islands, over 2,000 miles away. The mystery took an even darker turn when a shallow grave was discovered nearby containing the bones of one of the fishermen, Scott Mormon. The other 4 were never found. Unfortunately, this only led to more questions. Who buried Mormon? If survivors made it to land, where did the others go? And how did the small boat drift that far intact? With no survivors to tell the tale, the Sarah Joe remains one of the Pacific Ocean's most haunting maritime riddles.
For those of us left behind, the vast unmarked grave, which is home for those lost at sea, is of no consolation. It can't be visited. There is no headstone on which to rest a bunch of flowers. The only place we can revisit them is in our hearts or in our dreams.
Idaho, the disappearance of DeOrr Kunz Jr.
Today marks a decade since DeOrr Kunz Jr. disappeared from a Lemhi County campground. The mystery around what happened to him drew intense scrutiny, captivated the nation, and has left his family living a nightmare for 10 years.
The 2015 disappearance of 2-year-old DeOrr Kunz Jr. is a nightmare of the American wilderness. While camping in the Salmon Chalice National Forest, Kunz's parents claimed he vanished in mere minutes while they were out exploring. Massive searches yielded absolutely nothing. No body, no blood, and no signs of animal predation. The total lack of physical evidence led investigators to name the parents as suspects, theorizing a cover-up, yet they've maintained their innocence. The mystery remains stuck in limbo. Did the child wander off and succumb to the elements in a place searchers missed? Or did something sinister happen within the family? Without a body or a confession, the fate of little DeOrr remains one of Idaho's darkest open questions.
DeOrr's grandma, Trina Clegg, sent me a statement on behalf of DeOrr's mom, Jessica Mitchell. Jessica says the pain of each day still feels the same as the day DeOrr went missing, adding, quote, "I love and miss my son every day."
Illinois, the Tylenol murders.
Crime captivated the nation, put the nation on its ear, and had probably hundreds and hundreds of thousands of households going through their medicine cabinets to try to determine, do we have poison in our house?
A wave of terror swept Chicago in late 1982 when several people died after consuming Tylenol capsules laced with cyanide. The killer had randomly pulled bottles from store shelves, poisoned the medicine, and then returned them, turning everyday pharmacies into a game of Russian roulette. This act of domestic terrorism changed the world, leading to the tamper-proof packaging that we use today. However, the perpetrator remains unknown. While a man named James Lewis was convicted for trying to extort Johnson & Johnson during the crisis, he was never physically linked to the poisonings and died in 2023 without providing further answers. The killer, who possessed a terrifying knowledge of chemistry, committed the perfect crime and fundamentally changed how we buy and consume medicine.
The family members of the victims are entitled to some closure, but until there's a prosecution, until someone is charged and hopefully convicted, there really is no closure for them.
Indiana, the Burger Chef murders.
It's been 45 years since 4 Burger Chef employees were murdered. The case is still open, and now the place where they worked is about to be demolished.
On the Friday night of November 17, 1978, 4 young employees at a Burger Chef in Speedway, Indiana, vanished at closing time. Police initially dismissed it as a petty embezzlement gone wrong and tragically failed to secure the scene. 2 days later, the teenagers' bodies were found 20 miles away in the woods, with evidence showing that they had been brutally murdered. The investigation was botched from the start, with the restaurant cleaned and reopened the very next day, thereby destroying vital evidence. The negligence ruined the investigation and led to questions we still don't have answers to. Was it a robbery, a botched kidnapping, or a thrill kill? Despite thousands of leads and confession letters, the connection between the victims and their executioner remains unknown, leaving a permanent scar on the community.
Well, every time you go by, you think of Jane. Yeah. You know, that's the thing. Yeah, it should have came down it should have came down immediately.
Iowa. Villisca axe murders.
Villisca, Iowa, the heartland of farming. Surrounded by miles and miles of cornfields, you'd think that this small, quiet town would be filled with nothing but happy history. But this place has a dark side, and that's why we're here.
The quiet town of Villisca became the site of a massacre on the night of June 9, 1912. 8 people, the Moore family and their 2 young guests, were brutally bludgeoned to death in their sleep by an axe-wielding intruder. The killer had strangely covered all the mirrors in the house and locked the doors before vanishing into the night. An enormous number of suspects were brought forth, including a traveling minister and a state senator. Yet trial after trial ended in hung juries and acquittals. The lack of forensic technology at the time meant the physical evidence they did manage to collect was useless. Today, the house still stands as a morbid tourist attraction, but the question of who slaughtered 8 innocents in their beds remains a century-old secret.
But the weirdest and strangest part is this killer didn't want to see himself. Covered up all the mirrors in the entire house. Did he not want to see what a true monster looks like? And who was the killer? As an unsolved murder case, the suspect was never caught.
Kansas. The disappearance of Randy Leach.
Randy got there around 10 p.m., driving his mom's car, a gray 1985 Dodge 600 sedan. Although nobody saw him drinking, Randy seemed to be messed up and had a hard time walking, according to people at the party.
In 1988, 17-year-old Randy Leach drove his mother's gray Dodge sedan to a graduation party in rural Linwood, Kansas, and was never seen again. The strangest part of this mystery is the disappearance of the car. Despite extensive searches of the Kansas River and various local ponds, neither the boy nor the full-sized vehicle has ever been recovered. Rumors of satanic cults and drug deals have clouded the investigation for decades, but no credible witness has ever come forward. Perhaps the largest question in this weird tale remains: just where in the heck is that car? Did Randy drive away to start a new life, or was he murdered and the car crushed? Without the vehicle, police have no crime scene to investigate.
We would like to have the family get some solace after, what has it been, 36 years.
Kentucky. The Kelly-Hopkinsville encounter.
Throughout American history, we've been no stranger to the occasional alleged alien encounter. Anything from Roswell, New Mexico to Area 51, and even here in Kelly, Kentucky, where the famous Kelly-Hopkinsville goblin incident occurred 70 years ago today.
On August 21st, 1955, a rural farmhouse near Hopkinsville became the site of a terrifying interstellar seed. 2 families rushed to the police claiming they were under attack by small goblin-like creatures. For nearly 4 hours, they held the beings off with gunfire, reporting that bullets bounced off the creature's metallic skin with a distinct ringing sound. Indeed, there was some credibility to the chaos. Police found a house riddled with bullet holes and witnesses in a state of genuine medical shock. While skeptics attribute the event to aggressive great-horned owls, families never sought fame or money. They maintained until their deaths that they had battled intruders not of this earth, making it one of the most compelling close encounters in history.
In the 70 years since that initial encounter, the property's been sold and the house destroyed. But the story still remains.
Louisiana. The Axeman of New Orleans.
The city was also worried, plagued, and in fear of a figure known as the Axeman.
From 1918 to 1919, the Axeman held New Orleans in a grip of terror. This serial killer broke into Italian groceries and homes, using the victims' own axes to bludgeon them to death. He was not just a killer, but a showman, writing a letter to the press claiming to be a demon and promising to spare anyone playing jazz music on a specific night. The city actually complied, filling dance halls with music, and indeed, no one died. Weirdly enough, the attacks stopped just as suddenly as they started, and the shadowy Axeman was never caught or identified. Was he a jazz-loving psychopath hoping to advertise the greatness of the music? Or a calculated killer with a vendetta against Italian grocers? Alas, his identity vanished into the humid Louisiana air.
The axe murders seemed to cease, just as mysteriously as they had started, and no closure to the case was brought. It sort of receded back into yet another New Orleans legend.
Maine, the Allagash abductions.
This light came out, this thing started moving, and so we thought, well, you know, this is real. This is really happening. This is not a figment of our imagination. I mean, we've got to deal with this situation now.
In 1976, 4 men camping in the Allagash wilderness experienced one of the most famous alien events in history. While out night fishing, the men were engulfed by a blinding sphere of light. After paddling to shore, they discovered their roaring campfire had burned down to ashes, though they swear that only minutes had gone by. Years later, under hypnosis, the men recounted identical details of being taken aboard a mysterious craft. However, the mystery has since fractured a little bit. One of the 4 men, Chuck Rack, later claimed that the abduction story was a fabrication for money and alleged that the group was using drugs. However, the other 3 men vehemently deny this and stand by their testimony. While Rack's recantation has cast a permanent shadow of doubt over what happened in the deep woods, we still don't know what exactly occurred, if anything at all.
There was no apparent explanation, but Jim was getting worse, his doctors growing more concerned. Repeatedly, they asked Jim what was wrong, and he finally revealed the nightmares. A psychiatrist working on the case said it sounded like an abduction experience.
Maryland, the death of Ray Rivera.
The biggest question is, where did he come from? How did he get through that hole?
In 2006, Ray Rivera's body was found in a conference room at Baltimore's Belvedere Hotel, having apparently crashed through the roof. While police believed that Rivera took his own life, the physics of the fall didn't add up. The distance from the roof edge to the hole seemed nearly impossible for a human to jump without a running start that the roof just didn't allow. Furthermore, his glasses and phone were found intact, and a bizarre rambling note taped to his computer referenced the Freemasons. While it may seem like Rivera took his own life, the evidence supports conflicting theories: a mental health crisis and a staged murder connected to his work with a financial firm. With the medical examiner listing the manner of death as undetermined, Rivera's final moments remain a baffling puzzle.
The fact that the medical examiner left the case open in terms of manner of death as undetermined is what the case is all about, is that it doesn't have a firm conclusion to it.
Massachusetts, the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum heist.
The first thing the police did after freeing the guards and getting their statements was search the museum for evidence.
In the early mornings of March 18, 1990, Boston became the site of the biggest art heist in history. 2 men disguised as police officers conned their way into the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum, tied up the guards, and spent 81 minutes stealing masterpieces by Vermeer and Rembrandt. The haul, valued at over $500 million, has never been seen since. The mystery's twofold: just who were the thieves, and more importantly, where's the art? Works of this magnitude are impossible to sell on the black market, and despite numerous FBI stings and mob rumors, the frames hang empty to this day. It remains the ultimate unsolved whodunit of the art world, with a $500 million treasure still hidden somewhere in the dark.
The pieces that were stolen were priceless masterpieces. One was a Rembrandt seascape known as The Storm over the Sea of Galilee. It's the only seascape Rembrandt ever did. Another piece was called The Concert. It was by Vermeer. It's the only Vermeer that's missing in the world. Those 2 pieces alone were valued at the time of over $200 million.
Michigan, the disappearance of Jimmy Hoffa.
I don't wait for anybody more than 10 minutes.
He's at the house.
What house?
The 1975 disappearance of Teamsters leader Jimmy Hoffa is the holy grail of mob mysteries. Hoffa vanished from a restaurant parking lot in Bloomfield Township on July 30th, 1975 while waiting to meet two mafia bosses. He was never seen again. While it is widely accepted that he was murdered by the mob to prevent his return to power, the mystery lies in the disposal of the body. Every theory from burial under Giant Stadium to incineration in a Detroit crematorium has hit a dead end. Despite federal investigations, tell-all books, and deathbed confessions, not a single physical trace of Hoffa has ever been found. His disappearance remains the ultimate symbol of organized crime's ability to erase a man completely from the face of the earth.
Let's get out of here. Come on.
Minnesota. The disappearance of Brandon Swanson.
You were on the phone with your son a large part of those early hours when you were trying to find him, and he was trying to find you. He wasn't hurt at all, right? I mean, the car went into a ditch, but he seemed to be okay.
Correct. He said he was fine, that he was not injured. And, in fact, when we did find his vehicle...
Shortly after midnight on May 14, 2008, 19-year-old Brandon Swanson accidentally drove his car into a ditch and then called his parents for a ride. He stayed on the phone with his father for 47 minutes, guiding him toward his location. But suddenly, Brandon shouted an expletive and the line went dead. He was never seen again. The mystery only deepened when his car was found miles away from where he thought he was and where he told his father to go. Search dogs traced his scent to a nearby river, but no body was ever recovered. The mystery remains. What did he see that made him scream? Did he fall into the water, or did he encounter someone in the dark? We might never know, as Brandon simply vanished into the rural Minnesota night.
We didn't immediately hang up the phone. We called his name. We tried to, thinking that he still had the phone, that it was very near him, that he could pick it up. He'd hear our voice, and we called out to him several times, and we realized, he's not there.
Mississippi. The Phantom Barber of Pascagoula. In 1942, the small town of Pascagoula was terrorized by a creepily specific intruder. The so-called Phantom Barber would break into homes at night by slitting window screens, but not to steal valuables or harm the occupants. In fact, their primary motive was to cut locks of hair from young girls while they slept. Naturally, the violation and intimacy of the crime caused mass hysteria. Police eventually pinned the barber crimes on a man named William Dolan after he was arrested for a separate attack, but many locals remained unconvinced. The sheer weirdness of the motive has kept this crime in the public consciousness, and the evidence against Dolan was largely circumstantial. So the true identity of the man who stole hair in the dark remains a disturbing legend of Mississippian folklore. Missouri. The Springfield Three.
It's three grown women that just disappeared. One person may be something that you could sit back and go, okay, I can see that. Two people are difficult to imagine, and three is almost unfathomable.
In June of 1992, Cheryl Levitt, her daughter Susie, and Susie's friend Stacy McCall vanished from Levitt's home in Springfield. The next morning, the house was an eerie sight. The door was left unlocked, the women's purses were lined up, and the dog was agitated. But the women themselves were gone. Bizarrely, the home and the surrounding area showed a distinct lack of a struggle. A persistent theory suggested that the bodies are buried beneath the local hospital parking garage, where modern ground-penetrating radar has supposedly shown anomalies. However, police have stated the construction timeline makes this impossible and have refused to excavate. Without a crime scene or bodies, the Springfield Three simply walked into the void, leaving behind a pristine home and a mystery that continues to haunt Missouri.
I do believe they're probably gone. They're probably deceased. I don't have anything that tells me for sure. So until they have found their remains, I have to believe that they're still alive and well.
Montana. Disappearance of Patricia Meehan.
As I looked out across the accident, I noticed someone on the other side of the fence standing there like a spectator, not like that it had happened to her.
37-year-old Patricia Bernadette Meehan collided head-on with another vehicle in Montana Highway 200 near Circle on April 20th, 1989. Dazed and glassy-eyed, she stepped out of her car, stared silently at the wreckage, and walked off into the surrounding prairie. She was never seen again.
She was a very caring individual. Never wanted to hurt anyone, and here she had a very traumatic accident where she may have thought instantly that she hurt or killed another person, and her mind blocked that out.
Over the years, more than 5,000 reported sightings poured in from across the U.S., but none were verified. Investigators theorized that Meehan, suffering from head trauma or emotional distress, might have wandered off in a fugue state. Featured on Unsolved Mysteries, her case remains one of Montana's most haunting disappearances, a woman seemingly erased by the open plains.
More than anything else in the world, I want her back with us. When we would then know that she'd be safe, not knowing who she's going to get a ride from. And that's my biggest worry, I think. Just preys on your mind day in and day out. And you pray to God and hope that she's with some good people.
North Carolina, lost colony of Roanoke.
It is one of America's oldest unsolved mysteries, and it happened in our own backyard. What happened to the lost colony of Roanoke?
In 1587, more than 100 English settlers established a fragile colony on Roanoke Island off the coast of present-day North Carolina. When a resupply ship finally returned 3 years later, the fort was deserted.
No one knows for certain what happened. Some argue the colonists traveled inland. Some think they died or were all killed. Others firmly believe they came here to Hatteras Island.
Because the colony doesn't know they're lost. In their mind, someone's coming back with resupplies.
The colonists did leave behind a clue.
The only clue is the word Croatoan, carved into a post. No bodies, graves, or records were ever found. Did the colonists assimilate with the Croatan tribe, perish in conflict, or die of famine? Archaeological finds at sites miles away suggest migration, but no proof has ever surfaced. Over 4 centuries later, the fate of the Roanoke settlers is America's original unsolved mystery. A chilling question mark at the dawn of its history.
I think that it's almost a duty to learn about it. This is the birth of America, and this is the real story.
It's a story of failure, but these failures are what the success of our nation is founded on.
North Dakota, disappearance of Barbara Louise Cotton.
And continuing coverage today marks 40 years since a 15-year-old girl went missing just blocks away from her home in Williston. Family and friends are still looking for answers involving the disappearance of Barbara Cotton. And in the midst of it all, they decided to celebrate her life.
15-year-old Barb Louise Cotton left a restaurant in downtown Williston, North Dakota after dinner with friends and vanished on her short walk home. She was last seen heading toward Recreation Park, just blocks from her house on April 11th, 1981.
What I can remember, it was more on possibly runaway at that time, and that's kind of what I believed, I guess.
That didn't change for I don't know how long after she disappeared, that they finally decided she wasn't a runaway.
But the question still remains, what actually happened?
Despite searches, interviews, and decades of renewed attention, no physical evidence has ever been found. Rumors of suspects and sightings persist, but none have been confirmed. More than 40 years later, Cotton's disappearance is among North Dakota's oldest active missing person cases, a mystery that still haunts the quiet streets of Williston.
Although this is the family's first time holding an event to celebrate Barbara's life, both pain and hope still remain.
You just walk into a store and hope to see her. You know, you get a phone call and you take it because you hope it's her calling you. And a lot of that throughout the past 40 years.
Nebraska, disappearance of Stephen Hataja.
Our math department at Chadron State had been looking for a theoretical mathematician. You know, Chadron State's a fairly small community, somewhat remote, a couple of hours to the nearest mall. Not too often do you find PhD mathematicians that would like to settle in that kind of a rural environment.
Chadron State College math professor Stephen Hataja vanished from the small Nebraska college town where he taught in December 2006. Months later, searchers discovered his burned remains bound with wire in a ravine just south of campus, a gruesome and baffling scene.
It was widely reported that the cause of death for Dr. Hataja was smoke and soot inhalation combined with thermal injuries. That is true. In layman's terms, that means that Dr. Hataja unfortunately burned to death. Additionally, there were wrappings around Dr. Hataja's ankles, around his torso, his midsection, connecting him to a tree.
Authorities detailed the discovery and said homicide had not been ruled out, though no suspects were ever identified. Friends and colleagues remembered Hatice as quiet and kind, though struggling with personal pressures, leaving investigators uncertain whether his death was self-inflicted, foul play, or something stranger. The case inspired author Poe Ballantyne's memoir, Love and Terror, on the howling plains of nowhere, ensuring Hatice's mystery stands as perhaps Nebraska's darkest cold case.
I actually also had sent an email to one of the editors at the Chronicle of Higher Education, and I just got a strange email back from him that said that this happens all the time. We get emails like this all the time, and they usually just show up. So right now it's not news for us. I was kind of shocked by that.
New Hampshire, Bear Brook murders.
Cold case investigators in New Hampshire have a major update in the infamous Allenstown murders. It's a case our Bob Ward has covered for decades and featured as part of New England's Unsolved. 4 people were found dead in Bear Brook State Park.
A hunter in Bear Brook State Park discovered a 55-gallon drum containing the remains of an adult woman and a young girl in the mid-1980s. 15 years later, another barrel was found nearby with 2 more children inside. For decades, the victims and their killers were unknown, collectively called the Allenstown Four.
If you know something, say something. This is no longer a time for secrets. Everybody involved is getting older. Let's figure out what happened here.
Forensics genealogy eventually tied the murders to serial offender Terry Petter Rasmussen, also known as Bob Evans, and identified 3 victims. In 2025, the 4th, Rasmussen's biological daughter, Ray Rasmussen, was finally named, bringing long-awaited closure to part of the case.
It's important to the family to know who their little sister was so they can do whatever they need to do in terms of putting all that back together.
Yet questions remain about the precise timeline and motive. New Jersey, Watcher of Westfield.
When a New Jersey family moved into a new home, they began receiving disturbing letters from someone who called themselves the Watcher. Now, after years of torment, that family is finally speaking out.
This is the now infamous Watcher House at 657 Boulevard in Westfield, New Jersey.
Derek and Maria Broadus thought they'd found their dream home in Westfield, New Jersey, until the letters began arriving. Signed only the Watcher, the notes described the couple's children, the home's layout, and a disturbing obsession with the property itself. The author claimed their family had watched the house for generations and threatened to call to the young blood.
Derek Broadus says, "I was a depressed wreck."
They hired a number of experts. They hired a former FBI agent to try to create a profile. They hired a private investigator to kind of look around the neighborhood.
The family ultimately moved in with Maria Broadus's parents before deciding to put 657 Boulevard back on the market.
Police chased every lead. Neighbors, postal records, even prior owners, but came up empty. DNA testing proved inconclusive, and the Broaduses eventually sold the house in 2019. The mystery inspired Netflix's hit series The Watcher, created by Ryan Murphy and Ian Brennan. Despite the added layer of publicity, though, the real-life stalker's identity remains unknown.
Now, 5 years later, the family's selling the property that they've never lived in, that has haunted them for years, taking a loss, selling it for $400,000 less than they paid for it. We spoke with their attorney in the midst of their ordeal.
It's a great house. This is a total tragedy and nightmare for my clients.
New Mexico, Las Cruces Bowling Alley Massacre.
About 8:30 in the morning on February 10th, 1990, Las Cruces police were dispatched to Las Cruces Bowl, where the 4 children and 3 adults were found shot execution style. 5 ultimately died from their injuries, including the 3 children.
On the morning of February 10th, 1990, 2 armed men entered the Las Cruces Bowl as staff prepared to open. They forced 7 people, including children, into an office, stole about $4,000 to $5,000, and shot the victims at point-blank range before setting papers on fire. 3 survived, including manager Stephanie C. Senek and her daughter, Melissa Rapaz, though Senek died in 1999 from her injuries, bringing total fatalities to 5. Despite composite sketches, survivor testimony, and decades of work, the gunmen have never been identified. The case remains open, with Las Cruces police and the FBI seeking new leads.
And the case remains unsolved. Las Cruces Doñana County Crime Stoppers continues to offer a cash reward of $25,000 for information that helps solve this crime.
Nevada, secrets of Area 51.
America's Central Intelligence Agency has officially acknowledged the existence of a secret site known as Area 51. Newly declassified documents relating to the U-2 spy plane program make reference to the airbase in the state of Nevada, which has long been the subject of elaborate theories about aliens and flying saucers.
Hidden deep in Nevada's desert lies Area 51, a U.S. Air Force testing ground so secret it wasn't officially acknowledged until a 2013 CIA FOIA release confirmed its existence. The documents detailed Cold War testing of advanced aircraft like the U-2 and A-12 Oxcart, but decades of denial had already fueled conspiracy theories.
Take the combination of a remote location, an enormous degree of secrecy around it, plus all the rumors and the claims concerning alleged connections with UFOs, the enticement or the interest in secret aircraft itself. I mean, they all combine to make it something that people are interested in reading about and people are interested in writing about.
From tales of alien spacecraft and reverse-engineered technology to unmarked planes ferrying workers in and out daily, Area 51's secrecy has made it the epicenter of extraterrestrial speculation. Whether it's cutting-edge aviation or something far stranger, this isolated base remains the gold standard for mystery and myth.
Yes, I mean, the report is an internal history from within the CIA of the site. So there's a lot of information in there that we didn't have before. There are things like information about individual missions for these planes, pilot code names, things like that. So there is quite a bit of detail.
New York. Vanishing of Judge Joseph Forrest Crater.
A lot of people believe that once FDR is president, Crater will be a nominee to the United States Supreme Court.
He's kind of a man about town in New York. He knows all the cops, he knows all the politicians, he knows the Broadway producers, the dancers.
He is a widely known celebrity in the city. And at the time, if you're a New York celebrity, you're a nationwide celebrity.
New York Supreme Court Justice Joseph Forrest Crater left a restaurant near Times Square on August 6, 1930. He then hailed a taxi and, by all accounts, vanished into thin air. His disappearance became a national sensation, blending whispers of political corruption, gang ties, and scandal.
Stella's birthday comes and goes on the 9th, and Crater's a no-show. He's nowhere to be found, and she's a little worried because she's not used to her husband breaking personal promises to her.
And Stella's calling around to all these powerful men to try to figure out what happened to her husband, and powerful men will do what powerful men normally do. They're gonna cover up for their friend.
Investigators learned he had withdrawn over $5,000 in cash, liquidated investments, and that his safe deposit box and some files were empty, suggesting deliberate preparation.
Back in the 30s, Krause had a vacation home, which he frequently let Crater use for parties. Many of those parties were co-hosted by Martin Healy. Krause claimed that in early 1930, the two men buried $90,000 in the backyard.
But in mid-August, after Crater's disappearance, Krause visits his vacation home to find the place in shambles.
Yet no trace of him or his body was ever found. A grand jury failed to reach a conclusion, and to pull a Crater entered the American lexicon as slang for disappearing without a trace.
The police were able to verify part of Krause's story. Their investigation showed that Crater had written at least 2 checks to Krause. And Krause did indeed have a Westchester home.
Krause's 1954 revelations revive public interest in the case. Life magazine funds an excavation of the home's backyard.
Unfortunately, they don't find Crater's remains. And that's about as far as authorities can take things.
Ohio, Circleville letters.
Driving around Circleville today would be much like driving around Round Town in the late 1970s. Nothing changes much. In fact, the population continues to go down. There would be one major change, though. Back then, there were the letters. The Circleville letters.
In 1976, residents of Circleville, Ohio began receiving anonymous letters exposing alleged affairs and corruption. The campaign turned sinister when Mary Gillespie's husband, Ron, died in a 1977 car crash officially ruled an accident, though many considered the circumstances suspicious.
William Harsha is a 4th District state judge who was a prosecutor during some of the time of the letters. He received his share. Harsha says the main suspect of the letters was Paul Freshour, who lived in Grove City. Freshour was later convicted of booby-trapping a mailbox belonging to an ex-sister-in-law. That sister-in-law was a school bus driver who the letters would claim was having an affair with a school official.
Police later arrested bus driver Paul Freshour after a booby-trap gun linked to him was discovered. He was convicted of attempted murder. Yet even while Freshour was imprisoned, the letters kept coming. Decades of handwriting analysis and investigation have failed to identify the author, leaving the town's eerie correspondence as a haunting postscript.
The writer also says the signs and letters will not stop. Whatever happened, the letters continued off and on with less frequency into the 1990s. Then, like it never happened, the letters stopped, and Circleville carried on like nothing had ever happened.
Oklahoma, Girl Scout murders.
An empty tent, bloodstained mattresses.
Agents arrested Jean Leroy Hart.
The state's first two witnesses were former camp counselors.
For 2 days, we've gone over what happened to our child.
But still lacking, at least at mid-afternoon, was any hard evidence directly linking Hart to the scene of the crime.
On June 13, 1977, the bodies of Lori Farmer, Denise Milner, and Michelle Goose were found on a trail at Camp Scott near Locust Grove, Oklahoma. The girls had been assaulted and murdered, their bodies left about 150 yards from their tent.
We believe Lori and Michelle were probably most likely killed in the tent, and that Denise was either carried or made to walk to the location where the bodies were found.
There was blood on the mattresses of the first two cots, of the two cots on the left, and there was blood on the floor of the tent.
Suspicion soon fell on Jean Leroy Hart, a convicted sex offender who had escaped from prison 4 years earlier and was captured after a massive manhunt. Hart was tried in 1979 and acquitted, only to die of a heart attack in custody months later. Later DNA testing, including 2017 retesting that strongly suggested Hart's involvement, never yielded a conclusive legal result, leaving the case officially unsolved.
As far as the OSBI goes and the evidence that we have, our belief is that Jean Leroy Hart committed the murders. And the evidence that we have doesn't exclude him. It doesn't point to anyone else.
Oregon, disappearance of Kyron Horman.
It has been nearly 13 years since Kyron Horman disappeared.
His mom has not given up her search since the then 7-year-old went missing from his elementary school in Portland.
On June 4th, 2010, 7-year-old Kyron Horman vanished from Skyline Elementary School in Portland after attending a science fair with his stepmother, Terry Horman. He was seen walking toward his classroom but never arrived, and no one has seen him since. The search that followed became the largest criminal investigation in Oregon's history, drawing over 1,000 volunteers and multiple agencies.
Yeah, Kyron Horman was last seen here at Skyline Elementary on June 4th, 2010. His mom drives up to the Portland area at least once a year, if not more, to work with law enforcement to keep this case active and to bring him home.
Suspicion centered on Terry, whose behavior and communications fueled speculation, though she was never charged. As years passed, no physical evidence or trace of Kyron surfaced. His disappearance remains one of Oregon's most heartbreaking and confounding mysteries.
My life didn't really move on. My mission stays the same, and until I get to bring Kyron home, I just keep fighting for him.
Pennsylvania. Who killed Joseph Augustus Zarelli?
In Action News this noon, is the child at the center of one of Philadelphia's highest profile unsolved mysteries, now finally identified.
Moments ago, Philadelphia investigators identified the so-called boy in the box as Joseph Augustus Zarelli. The child's body was found in a cardboard box on the side of what was Susquehanna Road in Fox Chase back in 1957.
In February 1957, police discovered the body of a young boy wrapped in a blanket and placed inside a cardboard box in Philadelphia's Fox Chase neighborhood. For decades, he was known only as the boy in the box. Investigators chased thousands of leads, from orphanages to traveling circuses, but none solved the mystery.
Now, DNA was collected in 1998 and once again in 2019. It was that evidence which finally led detectives to a break. The DNA matched up with another sample in a genealogy database. It connected little Zarelli to his mother.
Then in 2022, forensics genealogy finally gave the boy his name, Joseph Augustus Zarelli, born in 1953. Authorities later identified both of his parents. The child died from blunt force trauma, but no suspect has been publicly identified. Though his name had been established, his killer remains unknown, ensuring the boy in the box case endures.
About the boy in the box, a profound sadness is felt, not just because a child was murdered, but because his entire identity and his rightful claim to own his existence was taken away.
Joseph has a number of siblings on both the mother and father's side who are living,
and it is out of respect for them that their parents' information remain confidential.
Rhode Island, origins of Newport Tower.
People come from all over the world just to see this tower, and it's one of Rhode Island's stranger things.
The Newport Tower is the oldest structure in Rhode Island.
It's believed to be at least 400 years old.
It's different than most architecture in Rhode Island, which is all wood and rectangular buildings. This one is circular, very unusual.
At the heart of Toro Park in Newport, Rhode Island, stands the Newport Tower, a circular stone structure that's baffled historians for centuries. Built of masonry fieldstone and featuring 8 arches, the tower has inspired countless theories about its origins.
No matter who built it, its purpose seems clear. In the 1990s, URI professor William Penhallow began solving the tower's mysteries. The structure is an astronomical timepiece.
The horologium, a building that keeps track of time.
Sort of like a Rhode Island Stonehenge.
Some claim it was erected by Norse explorers, Knights Templar, or even Chinese sailors long before Columbus, while most scholars credit 17th century governor Benedict Arnold, who referenced a stone windmill in his 1677 will. Still, its unusual design and supposed astronomical alignments continue to invite speculation. Whether medieval relic or colonial windmill, the Newport Tower remains an architectural enigma.
It's not just the winter solstice this tower can track. Every 18.6 years for what's called a lunar minor, the full moon shines through the west window. It also tracks the North Star and equinoxes, but the winter solstice is the most dramatic.
South Carolina, lizard man escape or swamp.
My tires was bust and it flat, so I got out and changed about 2 a.m. that night. After I was finished changing, I was putting flat in the jack in the trunk. And I looked back, I saw red eyes, big red eyes thing running toward me.
In the summer of 1988, 17-year-old Christopher Davis reported a chilling encounter near Scape Ore Swamp outside Bishopville, South Carolina. After stopping to fix a flat tire late at night, he claimed a 7-foot red-eyed reptilian creature lunged at his car, leaving deep claw marks in the metal. Within weeks, other residents reported similar sightings and animal attacks, prompting a media frenzy.
I scratched my head. I said, I can't believe this, what I'm hearing. I said, okay, draw it. He drew it. Immediately he drew it. At that time, when this first broke, it went all over the world.
Sheriff's deputies photographed large footprints and damaged cars, but no solid evidence ever emerged. Skeptics dismissed the legend as mass hysteria or hoax, yet locals embraced the story. Today, the lizard man remains a beloved piece of Carolina folklore and an icon of American cryptid culture.
The legend of the lizard man is Lee County. We just need to embrace it. Every town should have an icon, and we just happen to be fortunate enough that it happens to be a lizard man, that he chose us as opposed to us having to go out and find an icon for Lee County. I think he likes us, maybe he doesn't. He doesn't like cars, obviously, but we'll take him for what he's worth.
South Dakota. Deaths of Arnold Archambault and Ruby Bruguier.
Lake Andy, South Dakota, December 12, 1992. At 6 in the morning, a car stopped at a remote intersection at the edge of the Yankton Sioux Indian Reservation. It was cold. The road was icy. All 3 of the car's occupants had been drinking.
Archambault and his girlfriend Ruby Bruguier, both from the Yankton Sioux Reservation, crashed their car near Lake Andy, South Dakota. When responders arrived, the vehicle was overturned in a roadside ditch, but the couple had vanished, leaving Ruby's cousin, Tracy Dion, disoriented but alive.
I was really scared because, gee, Ruby's my cousin, you know. How can she leave me, you know? If she got out, how come, you know, she didn't want to help me out, you know? Or why didn't Arnold try to help me get out too, you know?
3 months later, in March 1993, their partially decomposed bodies were found in the same roadside depression, within yards of the crash site. Despite earlier searches, they came up empty. Investigators couldn't explain how the pair ended up back at the scene or why they weren't found sooner. The coroner determined hypothermia due to exposure, with the manner of death undetermined, and lingering inconsistencies have kept suspicions of foul play alive ever since.
I've gotten written affidavits from people that's also walked at people that had nothing to do with the case. They couldn't have been there. They couldn't have been missed.
Tennessee, Bell Witch.
Voices and Strange noises in the cave is actually very common, but there's been stuff actually happen all over the farm. It's not just the cave. We've had tapping and knocking in the cabin or hear footsteps and nobody's there.
Between 1817 and 1821, the Bell family of Adams, Tennessee claimed they were tormented by a violent and intelligent spirit known as the Bell Witch. The entity reportedly targeted farmer John Bell and his daughter Betsy, speaking in disembodied voices, moving objects, and even striking family members.
The whole community of Adams witnessed this. It attended church, but it gave multiple identities of itself, saying that it was an Indian spirit, an immigrant spirit.
The haunting became famous when legend holds that Andrew Jackson visited the Bell home, though historians find no documentary evidence he ever did. John Bell's mysterious 1820 death was later blamed on the spirit said to have poisoned him. Skeptics attribute the tale to folklore and mass hysteria, but the Bell Witch remains a ghost story that refuses to die.
There has been times where we've heard somebody walk up on the pavilion and there's nobody there. We've come in and there'll be books all over the floor in the gift shop. That's happened multiple times, actually.
History or haunting, the Bell Witch legend has put Adams on the map.
Texas. Texarkana Moonlight Murders.
Tonight, a final case from the Tex Files. Texas mysteries worthy of X-Files plots.
You've heard this one, serial killer stalking young couples on Lover's Lane. But it isn't fiction, it's the real deal, a legendary predator that people in Texarkana have always known as the Phantom Killer.
The twin cities of Texarkana, straddling Texas and Arkansas, were gripped by fear as an unidentified gunman stalked couples parked on remote roads in the spring of 1946. The killer, dubbed the Phantom, murdered 5 people and wounded 3 others over 10 weeks. Survivors described him as wearing a white sack with eye holes, attacking mostly with a .32 caliber pistol, though one later assault involved a .22 rifle.
Tillman Johnson was then a deputy sheriff on the Arkansas side.
People were frightened, not only here, but for miles around here. When dark came, the kids came in. People didn't go downtown too much. They were frightened.
Life magazine gave it front page coverage, and hordes of policemen came to town.
Despite a massive investigation, police never caught the perpetrator. Suspect Yule Swinney was imprisoned for auto theft but never charged with the murders, and no conclusive link was ever proven. The unsolved spree inspired the 1976 film The Town That Dreaded Sundown, and a legend of terror that still lingers.
Yule Swinney, car thief, habitual criminal, longtime con. In the end, a lot of the evidence does seem to point to him, and thus, mystery solved. Well, maybe not. Over the years, relatives of murder victims have received anonymous phone calls from a woman, middle-aged maybe, apologizing for what she said her father had done.
Utah, Skinwalker Ranch.
From UFO sightings to cattle mutilations, a ranch in the Uinta Basin has been home to numerous bizarre and terrifying events, and it's now the subject of its own TV series on the History Channel.
Yeah, well, tonight, news specialist Andrew Adams has his own exclusive look inside the mysterious Skinwalker Ranch after a visit that proved to be a little out of this world.
In Utah's remote Uinta Basin sits Skinwalker Ranch, a 512-acre property infamous for decades of bizarre activity. From glowing orbs and cattle mutilations to unexplained aerial craft. The site takes its name from Navajo legends of skinwalkers, shape-shifting witches said to possess dark supernatural powers. In 1996, aerospace magnate Robert Bigelow bought the ranch to study its phenomena under his National Institute for Discovery Science.
Brandon Fugel now employs a team of scientists, and they found when it comes to radio frequencies, the ranch has a peculiar pulse.
So we might think of this as a range across the radio dial. And here, it's as if several stations all at once became very loud.
Later, the Defense Intelligence Agency's AAWSAP program explored similar anomalies through Bigelow's research company. Despite years of monitoring, sensors, and high-tech cameras, no verifiable evidence has ever emerged. Today, Skinwalker Ranch stands at the crossroads of science, folklore, and pop culture myth.
What does it say?
Calibration failed, that it was too strong to actually calibrate.
At the time, our drone encountered an unexpected interference.
I don't know what that is or if it has any relationship to what's happened with your drone.
The RF sensors started going crazy.
Well, this is a recording I just made 30 seconds ago.
when a contrail shadow began to appear in the sky.
Virginia, Colonial Parkway murders.
Full of life, witty, smart, and beautifully herself. A true firecracker.
Loved ones of Lori Ann Powell remember the 18-year-old before she was murdered back in March of 1988. According to police, she was last seen walking along Route 614 toward Route 17 in Gloucester County.
Between 1986 and 1989, at least 8 people, 4 young couples, were murdered along or near Virginia's scenic Colonial Parkway, the historic route linking Jamestown, Williamsburg, and Yorktown. The victims were found in or near their cars, often showing signs of restraint but little indication of robbery or sexual assault. The FBI initially suspected a single serial killer, though later theories proposed multiple offenders or a rogue law enforcement impersonator.
State police have identified Alan Wilmer Sr. as the suspect who killed Powell. If that name sounds familiar, it's because back in January of 2024, police linked Wilmer to the deaths of Teresa Howell in Hampton and the deaths of Robin Edwards and David Nobley. Case is commonly known as the Colonial Parkway murders.
In 2024, Virginia State Police posthumously identified Alan W. Wilmer Sr. as a suspect in 2 related cases, but the broader series remains unsolved. Decades later, the Colonial Parkway murders continue to haunt investigators and the lovers' lanes of Virginia.
Nothing can erase the pain of losing Lori Ann. Today we find comfort in knowing that the truth has come to light and that accountability has finally been achieved. We hope this resolution brings a measure of peace to everyone who loved her and all the families still waiting for justice in unsolved cases.
Vermont, Bennington Triangle disappearances. In the forests around Bennington, Vermont, a series of mysterious disappearances in the 1940s and 1950s created what local lore would dub the Bennington Triangle. The most famous was Paula Jean Weldon, a 19-year-old Bennington College student who vanished from the Long Trail on December 1st, 1946 during a routine hike, triggering massive searches that turned up nothing. Between 1945 and 1950, at least 4 other people disappeared in the same remote wilderness, including hunter Mitty Rivers and veteran James Tedford, who vanished from a bus en route home. No bodies, no confirmed sightings, and no explanations emerged, fueling speculation about wild predators, hidden cults, or something far stranger lurking in Vermont's mountains. Washington. Disappearance of D.B. Cooper.
The break in the 9-year-old investigation came Sunday when Dwayne and Patricia Ingram's 8-year-old son overturned some sand while walking the shoreline of the Columbia River near Vancouver, Washington. The public learned in an FBI news conference Tuesday, little Brian Ingram unearthed several packets of deteriorated $20 bills, and the FBI confirmed it.
Chances are you've heard this one before. On November 24th, 1971, a man calling himself Dan Cooper hijacked Northwest Orient Flight 305 after it departed Portland, Oregon for Seattle, Washington. Claiming to have a bomb, he extorted $200,000 in ransom and 4 parachutes before releasing the passengers. In a bold, unprecedented move, he then parachuted from the rear stairs of the Boeing 727 into stormy skies somewhere over southwest Washington.
D.B. Cooper bailed out of a Northwest Airlines jet going 200 miles an hour at about 10,000 feet. The best guess is he jumped almost exactly over La Center, Washington. In fact, a placard from the jet was found near there.
Despite an extensive FBI hunt and occasional leads, including a partial stash of the ransom found near Vancouver in 1980, neither Cooper nor definitive evidence of his fate has ever been found.
Here it is, right here behind me on screen, that new breadcrumb that was discovered. A trace of metal pulled from Cooper's necktie. Here it looks massive, but in reality, it's itsy bitsy. I'm told 3 to 4% of a single centimeter. You need a microscope to see it.
Wisconsin, Beast of Bray Road.
I told my mom I thought I saw a werewolf, and my mom believed me.
I was walking along a good probably 7 to 10 seconds before it had turned its head.
That thing, that was no dog. That was too big to be a dog. That thing was bigger than me.
That thing was stalking cornfields, jumping on cars, and feasting on roadkill.
In rural Walworth County, Wisconsin, near Elkhorn, locals began reporting sightings in the 1980s and 1990s of a strange wolf-like creature roaming the countryside along Bray Road. Dubbed the Beast of Bray Road, witnesses described the tall, hairy humanoid creature, sometimes walking upright, sometimes on all fours, with glowing eyes and a menacing presence. Some claimed it chased cars or left scratch marks on vehicles.
It was foggy out and I was a little bit afraid. And this big thing come just like trucking, just trucking down the road at me, man. I looked at it and I'm like, and I got back in the car. And before I peeled off, that thing scratched the back of the car.
Tom Brichta's car was also scratched by the creature from Bray Road.
My adrenaline started pumping. I was scared.
While skeptics point to misidentified animals like wolves or bears and suggest hoaxes or exaggeration, the legend persists in regional folklore, inspiring books, documentaries, and a cult following among cryptid enthusiasts.
So, is it a dog, coyote, or werewolf? Believe what you will, but just remember, it's here, just waiting.
West Virginia, Mothman of Point Pleasant.
I was in the 3rd grade. My neighbors saw it, said there's a 6-foot bird with big red eyes and massive wings, chasing cars in the TNT, and in fact, it kept up with Roger Scarberry's 57 Chevy.
Between November 1966 and December 1967, residents of Point Pleasant, West Virginia reported sightings of a bizarre winged humanoid with glowing red eyes, quickly dubbed the Mothman. The first accounts came when 2 couples saw a large bird-like creature near the old TNT plant, and the reports ramped up in the following months.
It officially ended the Mothman. That's what ended the story.
Yep.
That was it. When the bridge failed, no one wanted to hear about the Mothman anymore.
It was ultimately discovered that a single eye bar, 55 feet long, fractured, causing the pin holding it in place to become loose and the tragic chain of events to follow.
Some locals feared it was a harbinger of calamity, and when the Silver Bridge collapsed in December 1967, killing 46 people, the legend took on ominous meaning. While scientists often cite misidentified birds, the Mothman remains a fixture of West Virginia folklore, spawning books, films, festivals, and a giant statue in Point Pleasant's park.
Is a copy of the original Point Pleasant Register of the first Mothman sighting. Wednesday, November 16th, so it would have been the morning after, couple sees man-sized bird, creature, something. Well, there's drawings. Scarsbury eyewitness sketch of Mothman, verified by others.
Wyoming. Disappearance of Amy Roe Bechtel.
With the 15-year anniversary of Amy Bechtel's disappearance coming up next month, the Fremont County Sheriff's Office say even though it's a cold case, they are still following up on tips and they even have a new lead.
On July 24, 1997, Amy Joy Roe Bechtel, a record-breaking distance runner and aspiring Olympian, vanished while jogging near her home in Lander, Wyoming. Bechtel had been mapping out a 10-kilometer race route in the Wind River Range when she disappeared. Later that night, searchers found her unlocked white Toyota Tercel abandoned along Loop Road with no sign of struggle or clues to her whereabouts.
From such a small community where we don't have a lot of criminal activity, especially in that time, to just go up in the mountains for a run and then just disappear and basically just disappear without any traces of evidence.
Despite extensive investigations, media attention, and renewed searches over the years, Bechtel's fate remains unknown. In 2004, she was declared legally deceased, and her disappearance remains a perplexing open case. Which of these mysteries intrigues you the most? Let us know in the comments.